afternoon program. And it's good to see you come out in this quite bleak weather, isn't it? I was saying to Peter that, wonder if we'll have anybody here this afternoon, but thankfully that we've got quite a nice group here. And I know you'll be very interested in my program, what I've got, and I want to share with you today. We'll just briefly recap over what we're promoting, and it's that we believe that the way to have good health is to follow the 8 laws of health. How do you remember the 8 laws of health? Well, there are some different ways people have coined phrases to remember it, and it's easy enough to remember it by spelling out New Start: nutrition, exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, air, rest, and trust in God. And these are 8 laws of health that are non-negotiable. I believe you need to, once you find they are so deep, once you realize how important they are, and they're just really basically what is going to get your health back on track. Plus, what I'm promoting personally is a whole food plant-based diet, because even though nutrition is one of the laws of health, nutrition is a very, very broad subject. So I'm promoting a vegan vegetarian lifestyle, but as I said to you before, over and over again, you can be a vegan and you can eat very unhealthy. So if we just say that it's a whole food plant-based diet, you will realize that you're going to have to start making everything from scratch. And after today's program, I think it'll just hit you home how we really have to make everything ourselves, really, because we can't start buying a lot of the pre-packaged foods that you buy from the supermarkets. Okay, I talked to you about the China study, and that's in one of the programs on the advantage that vegetarians have, and I believe we do. There is no doubt in my mind. I've been a vegetarian now for 40 years. I've been a vegan vegetarian now for over 30 years, and I know the advantage that it's made for my lifestyle, my diet. But even then, there's been a few learning curves as I've come through, and I've even had to leave some of the things off, and which we're going to talk about in different programs. One of them is gluten and dairy, and there's certain things, and we'll deal with them in another program. Today's talk is going to be on excitotoxins. What are excitotoxins? Well, I wanted to share with you, in the 1990s, I came across this book by Dr. Russell Blaylock. I heard the title of his book is called Excitotoxins, the Taste That Kills. Let's just find out who's Dr. Russell Blaylock. He's a board-certified neurosurgeon, professor, teacher, and researcher. And he had a private practice of neurological practice and has seen many of the increases of neurodegenerative diseases. Now, where I came across, as I said, in the 1990s, I heard him talk at a meeting in America. I was so excited. I actually ordered, and those are the years where we ordered the videos. And the videos that I bought were beta. Do you remember beta and the different videos? And so Peter and we went out and bought a video machine that would play beta specifically so I could play his DVDs. Or they weren't DVDs, they were tapes, the old-fashioned tapes. Okay, and I heard him talk, and he said how he had this brain, and he was getting people coming into his practice. He could not believe the amount of young people who were having brain tumours. So he decided, and he researched it, and once he connected excitotoxins to the brain problems that he was seeing in his neurosurgical practice, Once he saw that, he decided he would publish a book. And this is his book, Excitotoxins, The Taste That Kills. But he knew that if he published this book, it would have to be so careful, because he would be tested by every power that be is out there that is against him. So this actually, in some areas, is quite a technical book. Some parts it's not so technical. But I just ran with this. I shared this with a lot of people, because no one ever was talking about excitotoxins. What are excitotoxins? And most people don't know what excitotoxins out there. If you go along the street and you say, what's an excitotoxin? Most people would have no idea. So what are they? Let's just look. They are a class of taste-enhancing chemicals. They're usually an amino acid. Now remember, amino acid is a protein. So it's food, okay? That overstimulate neuron receptors that allow brain cells to communicate with each other. When brain cells are exposed to excitotoxins, they fire impulses at such a rapid rate that they become exhausted. Several hours later, these depleted neurons die. Okay, so we all know we've got heaps of brain cells, but I tell you what, I don't know about you, but we need to start guarding these brain cells, because we can't get rid of too many of them. There'll be a cut-off, and people say, oh, I can't remember anything. Well, can you hear this is happening in the world today? A lot of people saying, oh, I can't think. I've got a foggy brain. What's the matter with me? Well, let's just go on. Scientists have noted this effect particularly in the hypothalamus temporal lobes, part of the brain that controls behavior, emotions, onset of puberty, sleep cycles, and immunity. Now, why are they used? They are added to enhance the taste to different foods and the sweetness of various diet products. There are over 70 known excitotoxins, and MSG and aspartame are just 2. So if you're just thinking you're just going to avoid MSG, well, there's another problem that we're going to face here. So MSG is the savory, and aspartame is the sweet. Okay, so there's a two. So you got two avenues that they're attacking you on. So it could be the savory or it could be the sweet. Now, where do they come from? Where's the history of it? Well, for many years, Japanese cooks used to add it to food. Now, we're talking about in the early 1900s. And when some of the Japanese were taken prisoner of war in the Second World War, they were taken prisoners of war and they were given the rations too. The Japanese and the Westerners found out, and they said, why are the Japanese rations why do they taste so nice? What are they putting in them? Well, as it says, after World War II, food manufacturers discovered that this taste enhancer and turned it into a multi-million-dollar industry. But they had a few problems at the beginning. In 1960s, it was discovered that MSG destroys nerve cells in the retina of the brain. And they found that this was being put into baby food in the 1960s. Well, this came into Congress in America. Immediately, the food manufacturers said, oh, look, we will voluntarily take MSG out of the food, so we won't put it in any more of the baby food. And they thought, oh, this is wonderful. But guess what? They changed it. They just called it a different name, didn't they? And they called it hydrolyzed vegetable protein. And they put that in the baby food instead. Now let's just look at for a moment at a protein molecule, and I'm not going to go into it, but there is called essential amino acids and there are non-essential amino acids. There's quite a few there's 20 different amino acids. The non-essential ones down the bottom, you see there's 2. One is aspartate and one a glutamate. Now I want you to understand that the aspartate and the glutamate are part of the protein molecule. So it's food. It is food that they are somehow or other chemically in the laboratory, they can separate an amino acid out. That's what they've done. Now let's look how MSG is made. Sugar from sugar cane or tapioca or corn is converted into glucose. This is fermented by microbes that turn glucose into glutamic acid, and that's purified and dried into MSG crystals and added to countless foods. And this food, this taste-enhancing substance, and it looks just like salt or sugar, it's crystallized. You sprinkle it over your food, and it makes the food taste scrumptious. You will put it on a very, very ordinary food, and guess what? It just tastes so nice because it's made and it's designed to stimulate the taste buds on your tongue. Now, MSG occurs naturally. Small amounts of MSG are found naturally in many common foods because this is where it comes from. This is where they make it from. You've got it in seaweed, you've got it in mushrooms, you've got it in whole grains, you've got it in carrots, you've got it in meats, you've got it in nuts, and you've got it in cheese. But in its natural state, MSG is assimilated slowly by the human body and broken down so that the levels of concentration are kept low. But the MSG in processed foods, on the other hand, is highly concentrated, and that's the problem. When you're going to eat something, let's say you eat a food, and whatever the food is, it's got in it something that stimulates the taste. But you don't want it extracted out because it becomes too concentrated, and that's why our bodies cannot handle that. Now, what do these do to our brain? These chemicals can cause brain damage in your children and affect your children's nervous systems through their entire life, so that in later years they may have learning or emotional difficulties. And remember, this is all from Dr. Blaylock's book, and he's the fellow who's saying that this is what it's causing problems with our young people. These chemicals can damage critical parts of the brain known to control hormones, so that later in the life of your child, they might have endocrine problems. Remember, these have been around for a long time. These chemicals cause brain lesions in children and are irreversible and can follow a single exposure of sufficient concentration. But did you know that the food industry disguises many of these excitotoxins additives so that they will not be recognized? In fact, many foods that are labeled no MSG not only contain MSG but also contain other excitotoxins of equal potency. So don't get tricked into saying, oh, no MSG, oh, that's safe. No. Do you know what they excite our taste buds? They make them very attractive to the food industry. The chemicals in excitotoxins stimulate the taste cells in the tongue, causing the flavour of the foods we eat to be greatly enhanced. And how many of us have eaten Pringles? How many of us would realise and would affirm the fact that they are very Moorish? Can you stop at one? Oh, you can't. Do you know something? Because it stimulates your taste, your desire to want to eat them. And they are put in soups, snacks, sauces, gravies, many low-fat and vegetarian processed foods, and in many vegetarian foods. Manufacturers often pack them with flavour enhancers in an effort to make them taste irresistible. But they are more potent in liquid form. It is known that given in liquid form, such what occurs in soups, gravies, diet, soft drinks, etc., they are more toxic than when added to solid food because they're more rapidly absorbed into your body and they reach higher blood levels. But they are found in most processed foods. So if you eat regularly at restaurants, munch on chips, diet drinks, and other commercial sugar-free treats, it's quite likely that you regularly consume significant quantities of these substances. The other problem is excitotoxins are so prevalent in modern industrial foods, they're almost impossible to avoid. You need to be so careful. I have gone down the supermarket aisle and I have found them in almost every supermarket, like a product that you buy from supermarkets. Almost everything. Now, you've got your sugar substitutes. And, I just find, have you ever been behind somebody in a supermarket and you see in their supermarket trolley sugar substitute, like Equal or whatever? And I just feel like, oh, no. I just cringe when I think they're taking this aspartame. It is used primarily in sugar substitutes like NutraSweet and Equal, which are common in many diet, soft drinks, sugar-free candies and gums. I can still remember I went over with a group of women to Tonga and we were working with the people over there. And I can still remember going to the cupboard of the lady where I was staying and I was going through her cupboard, pulled everything out and I said, well, what's in this? What's in this? What's in this one? And then I went over to a different place onto a different island and there was a man there who he was taking this in all his coffees. He was drinking this Equal. And he just had a brain stroke. You know something, this is exactly what can cause it. And I said, just take them, throw them out. Because they think, someone left the island and they thought, oh, well, we don't want to throw these out. I said, just destroy them. You should not give them to anyone. They are poison. Okay, according to the FDA, there are more than 90 documented symptoms of aspartame toxicity, including muscle, tendon and ligament pains, cramps, vertigo, ringing in the ear, from mild headaches to comas and even death. And who's telling these people? They think they're doing a wonderful thing. Oh, we're not having sugar. Well, I tell you what, this is so much more. Sugar is bad for you, but this is heaps worse for you. Now let's just look. How many of you have heard and read on the labels, hydrolyzed vegetable protein? Okay, what is hydrolyzed vegetable protein? Because they're hiding lots and lots of secrets behind these names. You have no idea what it is. Let's just look at it. Because remember, instead of adding pure MSG to food, manufacturers are adding hydrolyzed vegetable protein. This contains 3 known excitotoxins and has added MSG. This substance is even more dangerous than MSG. How many excitotoxins do they know that there are? There is over 70. Remember that? But there is evidence that excitotoxins are still added to baby foods today. Usually these are in the form of caseinate, beef or chicken broth or flavoring. And remember, the brain is extremely vulnerable to excitotoxins at this early stage of development. How hydrolyzed vegetable protein is made. So vegetables, they get a great big vat. They boil up these vegetables, and sometimes it's just like corn stalks or parts of the vegetable that nobody uses. They boil them in sulfuric acid for several hours, then neutralize them with caustic soda. This results in a brown sludge forming, and it comes to the top. They scrape off that brown sludge, they dry it, and they powder that, and that's what they put in your food, and they call it hydrolyzed vegetable protein, and it tastes scrumptious. This powder contains 3 excitotoxins: glutamate, aspartate, and cysteic acid. And this tasty powder is added to most processed foods. Because it's called safe. Because guess what? It's made from vegetables. And so it's food. So, oh yeah, look, this is safe. That's what they tell you. And it is marketed as hydrolyzed vegetable protein. And when particular amino acids are combined with the basic hydrolyzed vegetable protein, they can bring out a beefy taste. Other combinations bring out a creamy taste. Have you ever wondered why you can go in and buy a cup of soup or creamy? Or this one tastes like a chicken. This is like a beef. Why? Because they're using different combinations of amino acids to bring out that taste. Now, what do these substances do to our health? They cause tumours and brain lesions. The artificial sweetener in your diet soft drink may cause brain tumours to develop, so that the number of brain tumours reported since the widespread introduction of this artificial sweetener has risen dramatically. One of the main ingredients in aspartate can cause the same brain lesions as MSG. And that was one of the triggering factors by Dr. Blaylock, who just said he could not believe the amount of brain tumours he was seeing in young people. And it's really interesting, because I can still remember a lady who I knew. I'd heard her, guess what, so-and-so had just been to the hospital, she's had an operation. She's got a brain tumour. It's not cancerous, but they had to operate. And I said to my friend, did she drink a lot of diet soft drink, or all the time? All the time, diet soft drink. Just be careful. Your soft drink is very bad for you, but diet soft drink is doubly bad for you. And some people think, just get into drinking Diet Coke. No way, no. They cause neurodegenerative brain disorders. They cause migraine, seizures, infections, abnormal neurodevelopment, certain endocrine disorders, specific types of obesity, Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease, ALS, and Alzheimer's disease. But these excitotoxins are particular risk if you have ever had a stroke, brain injury, brain tumours, seizure, or have ever suffered from hypertension, diabetes, meningitis, or viral encephalitis. So that's covering a lot of people. So that's why these people are very, very susceptible to excitotoxins. Your nervous system is compromised. Remember, these excitotoxins are linked to degenerative diseases, brain diseases, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, Huntington's, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, as well as more rare diseases of the nervous system. And what these diseases have in common is a slow destruction of brain cells. Multiple sclerosis and MSG. There is compelling evidence that dietary excitotoxins can worsen MS. The disease causes the brain to release large amounts of glutamate around the nerve fibers, and this destroys the covering of the myelin sheath. And Dr. Blaylock says that people who have MS should avoid all excitotoxins, food additives, but he also says that he has seen the reversal of many people who have MS if they just avoid those foods that are naturally high in excitotoxins, because some are. Remember I said to you, you've got your tomatoes, cheeses, mushrooms, especially portobello mushrooms. I found a recipe online how to make your own excitotoxins, and they use mushrooms. That was the broth that they use. Oh, this is the flavour. You add this to your food. It says he has witnessed a number of MS patients undergo dramatic improvements by following a diet free of excitotoxins. And your Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and your Lou Gehrig's. Excitotoxicity combined with elevated mercury levels in the brain, as well as exposure to pesticides and herbicides, affect these. And in the case of Parkinson's disease, several pesticides, for instance rotenone in particular, can produce symptoms in experimental animals that closely resemble the disease seen in man. Cases of rapid onset Parkinson's have been associated with pesticide exposure. And studies show that the pesticides not only trigger excitotoxicity within the specific areas of the brain, but they also increase activation of cells called microglia, the cells that are closely associated with neurodegenerative diseases. And some develop these diseases because of a weak genetic link, but anyone who will develop some damage, everyone who will develop some damage, and many will suffer from memory loss and have difficulties concentrating. And Dr. Blaylock says, oh yes, but he meets a lot of people. And he says, oh, they don't affect me. People say, oh, they don't affect me. And he says, I beg your pardon, they affect everyone. Some people are affected more so than others, but they kill brain cells of every one of us. Everyone. That's what they do. They will stimulate those brain cells so rapidly, they'll keep firing and firing and firing and firing until they overexcited themselves and they just die. Now, seizures. Seizures can be caused by head injuries, strokes, toxic exposures, metabolic diseases, congenital and hereditary diseases, and over-ingestion of brain stimulants such as caffeine, cocaine, methamphetamine, and excitotoxins in our food and drink. Now, seizures are caused by overactivity of the glutamate neurotransmission system in the brain and can most be controlled nutritionally, often without medication. And he was saying how he can, in his practice, he can control these without giving people medication by just telling them what to eat, what to avoid. And Dr. Blaylock found that most patients who have intractable seizures consume large amounts of glutamate additives, MSG or aspartame, in their food and drink. So who's telling those people who are having seizures to avoid excitotoxins? Because most people don't even know what they are. What are excitotoxins? Well, we'll go on. Now, they also affect your reproduction, exposure in your early life. Your hypothalamus affects hormones that regulate reproduction and sexual function. Now, animals have significant problems with reproduction, including infertility. I mean, I tell you what, do you remember, my age, I can remember back when I was a young woman, it was rare to find people, other women, who were infertile. Now it is so common. And you know how often people have got to go and have fertility treatment, and there's so many people who are infertile. Why? Who's putting it back to remember, these have been around for this is 2 generations now. No wonder we are in the middle of this. They cause destruction of receptors in the male reproductive system, and also your female reproductive systems. So you've got problems wherever, with your fallopian tubes, uterus, ovary, whatever it is, all your reproductive. And because of the abundance of glutamate receptors within the uterus, menstrual problems are to be expected. Combine this with xenoestrogens, which are contaminating both food and bottled waters, we can see why there are so many female health problems in this country. Now, your xenoestrogens are your plastics that mimic estrogen in our body. And so we've got so many, and high amounts of glutamate in the diet can also cause abnormal spasms in the uterus, cramping and excessive bleeding during menstruation. And for men, abnormal sperm and reduced sperm production. How many young girls do you hear nowadays are having incredible period pains? They're cramping. They can't believe how bad they are. I mean, can those of us who are my age remember back? Was it like that those years? I mean, maybe you have a little bit of discomfort for day or so, but not like not like some of the young girls. They're just like in bed for a couple of days. Why? Because we have got the glutamate receptors in our uterus. Sudden cardiac death among young people. Now, if an animal's magnesium level is lowered and is subjected to a fright, about 50 to 60% would suddenly die of cardiac failure. Just like these young people, but if you add magnesium to their diets and repeat the fright, none will die. Now, I think back, I can still recall, now this would have happened, and I knew the young man 50 plus years ago, and he used to be drinking always this diet soft drink, and I can still remember he was my age at that time, and he went for a run. He was super fit. He went for a run, and he just dropped over dead. We could not believe it, you know, how this fit young man could drop over dead. Now I realise, I look back on it and I think to myself, you know, that is just typical. Dr. Blaylock said so many of the young athletes, especially if they're a little bit deficient in magnesium, that's the tipping point. Low magnesium causes the heart to become inflamed and overactive and throw the heart muscle into abnormal beating patterns called arrhythmia. You got problems with your heart, make sure you get onto magnesium. It has been noticed that people who succumb to sudden cardiac death often die after eating a meal. If they have low magnesium, high glutamate intake can cause the arteries to go into severe spasm, leading to a heart attack. And Dr. Blaylock he says many times, he says, people, they go into a restaurant, they have a high glutamate meal, and they'll come out, and he says he can remember even there was right there in front of him, he said there was a young person died right in front of them, because he said, and he asked, he said, did they just have a meal from the restaurant? Yes, they just had a meal, which is very high in your excitotoxins. Because I tell you what, how do people make food tasty, these restaurants? Remember, they add excitotoxins because they stimulates the taste. Everything tastes nice when you've got excitotoxins added to it. Cancer and its growth, invasion and spread. It was shown that elevated glutamate levels in the vicinity of malignant brain tumour caused the tumour to invade the surrounding brain and consequently result in death much faster. And he says recent research has discovered that a multitude of cancers, including lung, breast, prostate, colon, and melanoma, contain glutamate receptors. And those with more receptors have much worse prognosis. And cancer and its growth, invasion and its spread, and it's irony that the cancer patients are not being told that foods contain high levels of glutamate make their cancers grow faster and make them more likely to spread. And recent studies have linked glutamate excess to chronic fatigue syndrome, multiple chemical sensitivities, HIV, dementia, glaucoma, macular degeneration, osteoporosis, pulmonary disorders, bladder problems, insomnia, and a number of behavioural problems, including addictions. So it says they dramatically promotes cancer growth. When you increase your glutamate levels, cancer just grows like wildfire. Who's telling the people who have got cancer this? Watch what you eat. Nobody is telling them this. And when you block glutamate, it dramatically slows the growth of cancer down. This is all researched in Dr. Blaylock's book so thoroughly. You know, he's got nobody has questioned him. No one. He says that he has made his case so tight that he could not be possible, anybody could have any litigation against him. He had to do it so carefully. But there's more problems. Now, once inside the body, aspartame changes chemically to formaldehyde, a substance that is grouped in the same class as poisons such as cyanide and arsenic. And when a product containing aspartame is heated more than 30 degrees, for example, artificially sweetened hot drinks, a brain cancer-causing byproduct is called dicapiprazine is formed. And they found an Italian study, leukemia and aspartame. Animals were fed aspartame throughout their lives and were left to die a natural death. And there was a dramatic increase in related cancers of lymphoma, leukemia, and formerly rare brain tumours. And the breakdown product is formaldehyde, and this binds to DNA. One diet drink every day accumulates damage. Eventually, this damages the DNA enough to initiate cancer, which grows rapidly because of the aspartame. And I tell you what, how many of us know somebody who's regularly drinking diet soft drinks or diet Coke or whatever? So many of the people we know. And how much causes serious ill effects? The food industry and the FDA argue that in the case of MSG and aspartame, a person would have to consume an enormous amount. But Dr. Blaylock says this isn't true. And he says that the amount of MSG in a single bowl of commercially available soup is probably enough to cause blood glutamate levels to rise higher in a human child than levels that predictably cause brain damage in immature animals. Okay, but then we've got a blood-brain barrier. Have you heard about this? Everyone has a blood-brain barrier. It's a semi-permeable shield that is surrounding our brain that is supposed to stop toxins from getting into your brain. It protects the brain from hormones and neurotransmitters from the rest of the body. It maintains a constant environment for the brain. So we've all got a blood-brain barrier. But some ways that the blood-brain barrier is broken down. Hypertension. Who knows somebody who's got high blood pressure? Okay, high blood pressure. That will break down, make your blood-brain barrier, will open it up. Your development is not formed fully at birth. So obviously any babies or any little children should not have any excitotoxins. Exposure to microwaves can open the blood-brain barrier. And I tell you what, how many of us are exposed to microwaves? And it's just not like with your microwave oven, and we're talking about your microwaves in your cell phones too. What about radiation, trauma, inflammation, pressure, and injury to the brain can open the blood-brain barrier. Exposure to infectious agents opens the blood-brain barrier. All of these things open the blood-brain barrier. Now, do excitotoxins cross the blood-brain barrier? Well, they do. The food industry, meanwhile, suggests such claims are irresponsible and alarmist, and counters that the blood-brain barrier, a protective biological system that's supposed to prevent bloodstream toxins from entering the brain and damaging cells, that alleviates the potential dangers of the excitotoxins. So they say, oh no, it won't get in there. But Dr. Blaylock says that a level of excitotoxins has been found inside the brain following an ingestion of both aspartame and MSG. Remember I talked to you about can be weakened by aging, hypertension, strokes, brain tumours, certain drugs, neurodegenerative diseases, and even exposure to pesticides and radio frequencies. And he believes this may explain why the people with these conditions are even more susceptible to the effect of excitotoxins than the average population. And he says it's not just the occasional threat, that you've got it, but it's the constant ingestion. It's the steady stream for excitotoxins that we get daily from various food and drinks. And so you take the young ones nowadays, the teenagers. I said to one boy who's a teenager, and I can still recall him say, okay, tell me, what is the normal food that a teenager would have as a snack food for in his recess at lunch, at high school? And he says, or a can of Coke and a bag of chips. You ever watch these kids, the kids who are opening their lunch boxes at school? How many of them would have all these little snacky foods and all these little tiny little packets of this and little packets of that? Just really saddens me when I see this, While large doses of excitotoxins actually kill brain cells, that is not the only way in which they do harm. According to Dr. Blaylock, physiological problems have arisen from cells that survive exposures but nonetheless compromised. You can lose billions of these nerve connections without the destruction of the cells, but damage is still being done. So you may still have a lot of your brain cells, but there's still damage being done. And remember, not all people are affected equally. There's different people have a much more higher threshold than for excitotoxins than other people. But reaction times vary. Some people react immediately after consuming excitotoxins. Others may take up to 72 hours. I can still remember somebody I know, she said that her husband is very, very he's like a he's like a radar for excitotoxins. But even so, I don't believe they would every time he would eat something with excitotoxins, he would just end up on the floor with a migraine. Yeah, some people are like that, but still be careful because they're in a lot of other things that we don't even realize. But you can have simple skin rashes to depression to headaches, okay? But you can have all sorts of different problems. Children are 4 times more sensitive to excitotoxins than an adult's brain. And what's happening? How many of these young ones, they've got the ADHD, they have got impaired learning. Do you remember back years ago when you'd go to school and how many of the teachers now, they've got a class of 25, 30 kids, and you've got almost all of them have got some problems that you've got to check on. Oh, this one's allergic to this and this one's allergic to that, and this one's got a learning disability and all that type of thing. It is everywhere today. And you're not being told about excitotoxins. And parents are not being told about excitotoxins. After eating a meal containing MSG, the glutamate in the blood rises as high as 20-fold. And it stimulates glutamate receptors not just in the brain but throughout the body, in every organ and tissue in the body. And it can cause diarrhea, dyspepsia, irritable bowel reflux. And you remember, combine it with low levels of magnesium, cause intense cardiac irritability. How do we repair the damage? There is hope. You have to avoid everything that's got excitotoxins in them and eat a diet of unprocessed foods. Once again, whole food, plant-based diet. That's how I believe you're going to... I know there would be a rare time when I've eaten food with excitotoxins in it. I know that because it's very hard to avoid it. But if in my own home, I do not have any excitotoxins, any food in there whatsoever, I avoid it all. And so you just got to make a lot of things yourself. This is why you've got to get back into cooking and prepare all things yourself. How? Let's have a look where they're found in. Identify and avoid various forms of MSG and what kinds of foods are likely to contain excitotoxins. Vegemite. Vegemite is loaded with excitotoxins. Now, it really hurt me when I found that out at the beginning, but I've just accepted it. I haven't eaten Vegemite for so many years, I don't miss it. And what you've got to do is you've got to learn to educate your taste and start making nice spreads. I'm always making a spread. And I mean, it's so easy for me. I know how to make a tasty spread. For instance, like for me personally, I'd make lots of hummus. Now with hummus, I need a lot of lemon. Okay, now if you go down to the supermarket or the shop today and you go and want to buy some lemons, they would cost you so much. So what I've got a ready supply of frozen cubes that I've squeezed out last year, and I've got them ready. And I've got a great big tub of lemon cubes. I've got plenty of lemon that'll last me till when I need to squeeze out my next lot of lemons. So you need to think ahead. So I'm doing this all the time. Plus I've got, Promite. When Peter said that, oh, well, good, that's all right, because he liked Promite. Promite, just because it's got that salty taste. Cup of soup. Well, and you know what? Some people, they have continental cup of soup every day for their lunch. Oh, because it's handy. And you know what? It tastes nice. I do not at all saying that this stuff does not taste nice, because it's been developed to have that really nice taste, to stimulate you, that you can go back and you have more and more. 2-minute noodles. We'll talk more about those in a minute. But you've got your sweets, like your jelly, your dairy, diet-free things, and heaps of your salad dressings have got excitotoxins in them too. Heaps of them. I'm not saying everyone, but you have them in a lot of things. How do you avoid it? Well, you've got to go back into, you have your antioxidant-rich foods that contain higher levels of vitamin A, B, C, and flavonoids, your green leafy vegetables. Look, all these beautiful foods. Here's some more. Now, you take those little arnott shapes. How many of those? I mean, once again, you've got them. I mean, whether the biscuits, they've probably got not too much nutrition in them, but it's the flavours that they're coating the tops with. How many times, I've seen how many times the kids at school will just have a packet of 2-minute noodles dry, and they will eat the noodles dry, and they will sprinkle that flavoursome sachet over them. You've got a lot of your tomato products in there. I keep saying, when I was a young girl, I can still remember, I grew up on a farm. My mother had a garden, and she would bottle fruit. We didn't bottle vegetables those years. I don't think anybody really did, because I think there was some problems with botulism, so not many people bothered bottling them. But we did bottle the fruit. And I can still remember, this was early, probably in the 1950s. I can remember our family. Dad went to the shop and he bought a can of fruit, which we rarely had it, because we had our own homegrown and home preserved fruit. And I can still remember Dad tasting, and he says, "Oh, this tastes tinny." Do you remember back those years? Some of those older people who you remember how the food did taste tinny, and then all of a sudden it didn't. Why? What did they do to it? Well, I believe they lined it with BP plastics, and then they've added excitotoxins to it as well. Tomatoes, your tomato sauces, your Heinz ketchup, all of those things, they practically all have excitotoxins in them, the whole lot of them. All of your your chicken nuggety type of things, they taste nice. They're salty. They got a very nice taste to them. Your Cokes, your Diet Cokes, plus your soy sauces. Be very careful. Soy sauce is full of excitotoxins. Isn't it sad? Isn't it? Because you know something? I make my own bouillon broth type of stuff. I boil up my own vegetables and I make it. Yes, it's got a lot of salt in, but that's how it preserves. Okay, and it's quite a simple recipe, but you boil up, you have it simmering. You've got your garlic and your onions and your celery and your zucchinis and tomatoes and all that, and you just let them simmer for quite a few hours, and it just makes it into a juice, and you just blend them and you add salt to it, and that's your stock, and it's very, very flavoursome, very nice. But that's why I do it. Your dried soup mixes, I'll come on to them a little bit in a minute. I've got a picture up there and I'll tell you what it was. When a food product is 99% pure MSG, it is called monosodium glutamate by the FDA and must be labelled as such. However, when a food product contains less than 99% MSG, the FDA does not require that the MSG be identified. Yes. So it often appears on your labels in various disguised forms, such as hydrolyzed vegetable protein, spices, and natural flavourings. How often have you read that one? Now, ingredients that may contain 30 to 60% MSG. Hydrolyzed vegetable protein. We talked about that. Hydrolyzed protein. Hydrolyzed plant protein extract, sodium caseinate, calcium caseinate, yeast extract. See, there's your Marmites and your Promites and your Vegemites. Textured protein, autolyzed yeast, and hydrolyzed oat flour. Now, that's common. You often find that on your label. And yet it says on the front, no MSG. Now, ingredients that may contain 12 to 40% MSG. Your malt extract, your malt flavouring, your bouillon, your broth, your stocks, your natural flavourings, natural beef or chicken flavouring, your seasonings and your spices. Now, I've added this one here because I often get asked, isn't there any bouillon that you can have? What about this Marcel's? People say, that's healthy. That's a good one. Because look at the label here. It says there, it's Australian owned, and plus it's plant-based since 1982. It's Australia owned and made. It's low FODMAP. It's certified gluten-free. It is GMO-free. It's dairy-free, and it has no added MSG. Oh, isn't that nice? But read through your list. What does it say? Ingredients: salt, vegetable oil. Well, that's dubious what sort of vegetable oil they're using. Sugar, well, that's dubious. Dehydrated vegetables, onion, carrot, spinach, cabbage, garlic. Well, they're not too bad. Bay leaf, parsley, yes, dextrose. Now, this is where you've got to listen. Natural vegetable flavours. There are your excitotoxins hidden in that. Rice flavour, and also it's got yeast extract in it. So it's got 2 excitotoxins in there, and yet it says on the front that it's got no added MSG because it's got different names. See, the food manufacturers are very clever. They're calling things by different names now. And once you realise this, I personally have not found one stock, any brand of stock that is safe to use. I personally haven't found it. Now, ingredients that may contain some MSG. Carrageenan, have you ever seen that one? Enzymes. So, soy protein concentrate, soy protein isolate. And you'll find it in a lot of your soy products, like your So Good. Pardon? Tofu could be, but it doesn't have to be. Tofu would. If you look at the label on the front of your tofu, and it is made from the whole soya bean, it's much safer to use. Anything made from the whole soya bean is okay in my estimation, but not your soy protein isolate or your soy protein concentrate. They are very harmful very harmful. Whey protein concentrate and some soy milk. So the soy milk I'm talking about is anything that is made from a concentrate. But if you're going to go with your whole soybean, which I do, I make kefir using whole soybean, which is the Vita Soy, the red one, the organic, which has got the whole soybean in it. But if you don't want it, some people are a little bit funny about soy milk, that's fine. But because I'm culturing it, it doesn't matter to me. I don't mind it so much. But I avoid all these others like the plague. I wouldn't have them in my home. Now, 3 general categories of symptoms that result from MSG consumption. You can get allergic symptoms. You can have a rash, hives, asthma, sneezing, or your running nose. You can have peripheral symptoms. You can have a flushing, a jaw tightness, a headache, rapid heartbeat, chest tightening, diarrhea, stomach cramps, arthritis. And it's real scary if you have all of a sudden you get, arrhythmia. You think, what's causing this arrhythmia? And you don't think it's the food that you've just eaten. It just doesn't associate. People don't associate it with the food that they've eaten. And then you've got the central brain system with your depression, your insomnia, confusion, paranoia, your learning difficulties, your behavioural problems, your violence. So, and who's telling these little kids? Some of them are crazy. And they've got behavioural problems. Who's telling it? Their parents. But more problems. And Dr. Blaylock says all scientists who work in laboratories know that if you want to fatten up laboratory rats, you feed them MSG. Now, we've got to be blind not to realise that there's something is happening in the world today. There are so many people have got problems, and there is not necessarily overeating. They could have too much, they're carrying weight on them. Why are they carrying weight? They can't seem to get rid of it. Why? Well, he says in experimental animals, MSG babies have found to be short in stature, obese, and have difficulty reproducing. This effect can only become evident long after the initial MSG exposure. And more detailed studies have found that MSG babies have severe disorders involving several hormones normally produced by the hypothalamus. And not only do we have obesity epidemic today, but almost everyone has a problem with a hormonal imbalance. More excitotoxins, okay? A growing list of excitotoxins is being discovered, including several that are found naturally. For example, L-cysteine is a very, very powerful anti-excitotoxin, and it has recently been added to certain bread dough and is sold in health food stores as a supplement. Homocysteine, a metabolic derivative, is also an excitotoxin. So we need to be careful, be ready, and know what some of these are. Know your label numbers. Now, MSG is number 621. But in the mid-90s, 3 more flavour enhancers called 627, 631 and 635 which is a combination of 627 and 631, started appearing on supermarket shelves after scientists realised that these chemicals could boost the flavour-enhancing effect of MSG up 15 times. So if you've got, and it's in your 2-minute noodles, if you have 635, it's 15 times stronger than 621. And they are not tested for safety. Due to the consumer demand for food without nasty additives, the names MSG or monosodium glutamate or the number 621 are being phased out of our food. Instead, many food manufacturers prefer to use ingredients such as hydrolyzed vegetable protein, yeast extracts, and many others. And that's why you'll find it on the back of your packets. Yeast extract or natural flavouring. And you know something, there's nothing wrong with, spices, natural flavourings and spices. Well, what are the natural flavourings and spices? They don't say, and that's where they're tricking us. Watch your soy extracts. Soybeans have naturally one of the highest glutamate levels of any plant. And when you hydrolyze it, you release the glutamate, such as with soy protein isolates. These glutamate levels are higher in other MSG-containing products, so you must watch soy products. Now, some people completely avoid it altogether. Some people use a little bit of soy every once in a while if it is made as a naturally fermented one, which I think is the Tamari brand. That is, of all of them, that has not got the soy protein isolate, but a lot of them do. And I can remember years ago, I used to just go to the supermarket and buy Maggi seasoning, put it in everything because it made everything taste nice. But I didn't know all of this. Now this here was, I put this on here. Somebody said, what about packet soups? You know, I said to you, my family, we had a farm, and my mother, because we had, when I was a younger girl, my dad and mum had a dairy farm, and when I became a teenager, they changed over and they went into poultry. So they had like caged layers, chooks everywhere. And because mum, being the farmer's wife, she'd run out of a little bit of meat, she'd just go and grab one of the chooks out of the cages and just chop its head off and gut it, and we grew up with it. That was just the way it was in our family. So we would have loads and loads of chicken. And yet Mum, she came across, then she found these continental chicken noodle soup packets. And she thought, oh, this is going to save a lot of energy. Going out there, doing all that killing and that chopping of the head off, plucking and all that sort of thing. So she started to buy chicken noodle soup, and she brought it home. And we all liked it. We thought, oh, this tastes nice. And she used to be able to put it, she'd make her own dumplings for it, everything. Look, they taste nice. I didn't know, and I actually learnt that as a young woman, and I taught my family that too. I had no idea, and then when I found out, I could not believe it. Suppose you ate a commercial soup but also added a diet soft drink, he said. Your blood glutamate will go up by 40 times. Most foods have 2 or 3 excitotoxins, so the effect gets worse as you combine the toxins, and the effects are cumulative. And what you ate years ago may still be having an adverse effect on your health today. And so drinking more than 1 diet drink a day, in the longest human study spanning 22 years and conducted at the Brigham and Women's Hospital from Harvard University, they had an increased risk of blood cancer, they had a heightened risk of developing myeloma and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in men, leukemia in both sexes, and after yielding to severe pressure from the industry, the researchers downplayed their findings. More findings. It stimulates your appetite. As I said to you, how many times can you just eat one of those? And sometimes you can buy, let's say you can buy hot chips. And they say, oh, what sort of salt do you want? Do you want to have normal salt, or do you want to have this chicken salt, or whatever it is? And you say, oh, I like that chicken salt. I'll put that on, and you put it on. And guess what? Can you stop at 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, or you just eat and eat and eat and eat? Remember, it's been designed that way. It also increases cravings for carbohydrates, but remember, it promotes fat storage. That's why you can't get rid of any of your weight. Toxicity symptoms mimic other diseases and is not known by many doctors, but some people are much more sensitive than others. But the world is slowly waking up. Sales of Diet Pepsi have plummeted 35% over the past 10 years. 6% last year. All soda sales are down 3%. There is no weight loss when drinking diet drinks, and that's something people don't realise. And most people are concerned about the problem with aspartame. It was approved in 1981, and we know that since this aspartame and all these things have been approved to go into their food, this is when all these incredible brain tumours and all these seizures and all of these have just skyrocketed. The average Australian drinks of the age between 2 and 16 drinks 1.2 cans a day, but the average Australian between 19 and 24 drinks 2.1 cans per day. I can remember I went into a shop and there was this young woman there, and look, she would have been in her 20s, and she was just the assistant behind the counter. And she was drinking, and she was like hugely obese. And she was drinking one of these diet soft drinks. Do you know what? I had no idea who she was, and I thought to myself, I'm going to have to say something to her. She didn't know me from anyone, so I thought, I'll say something, get it out with, and then just run. But you had to say something because, these people, they have no idea. I said, do you realise what the problem is in these drinks that you're drinking? See, so many people. I can never forget, there was another time we were in Tonga, and there was because Tongans, there's a lot of Tongans who are very, very large. And there was this young boy, and he was about 8. And his mother was learning all about this, and she was so happy about learning all this, but the father wasn't on the same page. And the father used to go to the shop and buy the son a soft drink every day. And I thought to myself once again, I'm leaving this place and I will say something. And I said to the young boy, I said, can I just have a look at what's in your drink? And I went up here. It was so bad. It had caffeine in it, it had sugar in it, it had fructose in it. It had everything that you could possibly have in it that was harmful for him. And I said to him, you know something, that is no good for you, tip it out. And so you know what he did? He actually stood there and he just tipped it out like this. And then I said to the father, I said, do you know what you're doing to that boy? You're training him to have a taste for this food that's going to put in huge amounts of weight for him. And everybody was stunned, and I think I was a little bit stunned myself, because I thought, I'm not usually like straight in person's face, but I thought, look, I'm going to be leaving. If I don't say something, and I knew his mother was desperate for me to say something to the father, and so I did. And the boy just dutifully tipped it all out on the floor. And then a little while later, I went in and I privately went in. I spoke to the father and I said, "Look, I didn't mean to embarrass you." And then I just told him again in different words, saying the importance that he had to train his child to eat well at his. You don't bring up a child by giving them a soft drink every single day. That is like child abuse. So, summary. Aspartame is not necessary nutrient, and neither is MSG. If you want to avoid obesity, metabolic syndrome and cancer, and if you don't want to make your cancer more aggressive, then you need to stay away from these products. The damage affects pregnant women, unborn babies and newborns. It produces changes in the brain that are irreversible and reprograms the wiring of the brain, particularly the hypothalamus, and so it doesn't function normally. And Dr. Blaylock's summary, he says that if in MSG and all its different versions, as well as aspartame, were outlawed tomorrow, within 5 years you will see a significant drop in obesity and metabolic syndrome, a tremendous drop in certain cancers, and the ever-increasing neurodegenerative diseases. It damages pregnant women, unborn babies, and newborns. It produces changes in the brain that are irreversible depending on when it is stopped. And this is a picture of, do you know what they do in Fiji? You can go into the supermarkets and buy pure MSG. And that's what they've got there. That was my own photo that I couldn't believe it. And I thought, at least here in Australia we don't have it's so blatant, but over there it is everywhere. Monosodium glutamate, MSG. It's not the sodium that's the problem, it's the glutamate. I want you to get that. Monosodium glutamate. Sodium is salt. Okay, it's probably not the healthiest salt, but it's the glutamate. Proteins were designed to be broken down slowly. We weren't meant to eat hydrolyzed protein, broken down proteins and free amino acids. So, there's more yet. There's lots more I can share with you. Next month, I'm going to talk to you about electrosmog. Electromagnetic radiation that is everywhere. The Sunday after that is going to be on bombarded. It's going to be how we are being bombarded, and there are so many different attacks from our health. On Tuesdays, we're going to talk about the gut-brain connection, and I'm also going to share with you different ways that you can fast. July 26th, the gluten roundup and the glyphosate talk on how they're all tied together. And there's my YouTubes, but I just wanted to share with you a little bit before we talk, because this has been my little pet thing about, is 2-minute noodles. Now, I remember eating 2-minute noodles, and I actually liked them. And if those of us who have eaten them since then, you think, well, they're okay. But I've got a really thing about it, because there's so many, and I know that you here, a lot of you would have family members who are eating them as well. People that you know. How do you educate them? Well, for me, it's been a long process, but the only way you can educate it is just to tell them, to expose them to what they are. 2-minute noodles are like. And I remember I was in Fiji and I had a whole huge auditorium there, and I talked about 2-minute noodles because I knew that this is something that Fijians love. 2-minute noodles, and islanders, they love it. These processes, Peter and I, we were in Fiji in a supermarket, and I could not believe it. We went into this, it was in Suva, and there was these Chinese students there. Well, they looked like students, I assume they were. And there was about 2 or 3 of them. They had their trolley loaded, literally loaded, with 2-minute noodles and Tim Tam biscuits. That was their trolley. 2-minute noodles and Tim Tam biscuits. I often think about that, and I think, 2-minute noodles. But I do admit, the only thing going good for them is that they taste all right. Okay, and this is from Dr. Blaylock's book, What do they do to us? They kill brain cells, they affect the nervous system and all diseases of the nervous system. They damage endocrine glands, they cause obesity, they dramatically increase cancer cell growth, and they cause brain lesions and tumours. So can you see that? That is big things. It's not like little things where you just maybe even just get a small bit of a pain in your stomach. This is really severe. And plus, that's my favourite picture, and that was it. That was a MSG mouse and a normal mouse. And you wonder why so many people are struggling with their weight problems. And they just can't seem to get it off. Why? Well, one thing you're going to have to do is to get rid of all your excitotoxins. Now, 2-minute noodle experiment. In a first-of-its-kind experiment, Dr. Braden Keogh of Massachusetts General Hospital used a pill-sized video camera to see what happens inside your stomach and digestive tract after you eat ramen noodles. One common type of instant noodles. The results were astonishing. So what he did, I saw this, watch this video. They had a normal one without the noodles. They had two, like they had an experiment. The fella swallowed the camera and they watched it churning up inside of his stomach. Okay, in the video you can see the ramen noodles inside the stomach. But what was totally amazed that after 2 hours they are remarkably intact. Much more than when the homemade ramen noodles which were used as a comparison. This is concerning for a number of reasons. Now, I don't know, have you ever seen, and people have told me that the part of the reason is this because that they're coated with something. You ever look at those noodles that they have like got a waxy coating on them? Now, I don't know for sure, but it's possibly that's the reason why. But they're not just like normal noodles. Okay, but it puts a strain on your digestive system, which is forced to work for hours to break down this highly processed food. Ironically, most processed food is so devoid of fibre that it gets broken down very quickly, interfering with your blood sugar levels and insulin release. When food remains in your digestive tract for such a long time, it will also impact nutrient absorption. But in the case of processed ramen noodles, there isn't much nutrition to be had. And we know there's a lot of long list. If you look up the instruction or the ingredient list, and even on some of these snack foods, you know, those arnott shapes, you read some of them, you need to be very careful. I'm also mindful because I do buy gluten-free rice crackers. Now, the ones that I find they've got no flavours to them are just the plain brand. You don't have all those added. The moment you get the toppings on them, that's when you have the problems. But there's a long list of additives, including the toxic preservative tertiary butyl hydroquinone. This additive will likely remain in your stomach along with the seemingly invincible noodles, and no one knows what this extended exposure may do to your health. Common sense suggests that it's not going to be good. Now, these are the ingredient lists for Maggi 2-minute noodles as sold in Australia. You've got your noodle cake, you've got your wheat flour, your vegetable oil, and your antioxidants, plus you've got your mineral salts and your vegetable gum. Well, possibly they've got problems, but the main problems that you're getting is from your flavour sachet. Flavour mix sachet, iodized salt. Well, maltodextrin, which also can be an excitotoxin, and it can contain sulfates. Here it is, flavour enhancer, 621 and 635. Remember, 621 is MSG, and 635 is a combination of 627 and 631, and it is 15 times stronger than MSG. Then you've got your wheat, soy, celery, sulfates, your mineral salt, onion powder contains sulfates, vegetable fat contains colours, your turmeric, Caramel, which has got another set of problems, contains sulfates, your parsley flakes and your spices. Okay, then it's got vegetable oil. Could either be fried in, it could be GMO canola or it can be GMO cottonseed. Palm oil contains toxic levels of trans fats. Your antioxidants is known as butyl hydroquinone. A carcinogenic high doses causes birth defects, acute neurotoxic effects in animals, prohibited in food for infants. And salt. Well, salt, it's not going to be the healthy salt, but a heavily processed white salt. Now, the problems with these, the mineral salts and vegetable gums are not too bad, but they can cause abdominal cramps, vomiting and diarrhea if consumed in large amounts. Iodized salt is refined salt with added iodine, and then you've got your maltodextrin, maybe GMO, and controls sulfates. But sulfates have been associated with a full range of food intolerance symptoms, including headaches, irritable bowel symptoms, behaviour disturbances, and skin rashes, but are best known for the effects on asthmatics. So there's your sulfur. Your flavour enhancer, once again, I just spoke about this, and the range of problems is extensive. Heart palpitations, pins and needles in the upper limbs, bronchospasms in asthmatics, restlessness, irritability, dizziness, migraine, depression, nausea, tingling and numbness. And it's actually been prohibited in food for infants, but they change it. They give it a new name. I said this before. I just read that one out before. Numbers 627 and 635 boosts the flavour up 15 times. Antioxidant 320 is also known as butylated hydroxide, whatever, is banned in some countries and is a petroleum derivative. So these are in your 2-minute noodles. These are ingredients in your 2-minute noodles. Caramel 111, also referred to as ammonia caramel, may affect the liver, may cause gastrointestinal problems, and is prohibited in food for infants. But other ingredients, but whatever, they have got chemicals. But the only thing, as I said, going for it is they do taste nice, if you like that sort of taste. Okay, eating instant noodles is linked to metabolic syndrome. A new study published in the Journal of Nutrition found that women who ate instant noodles more than twice a week were 68% more likely to have metabolic syndrome. A group of symptoms such as central obesity, elevated blood pressure, elevated fasting blood sugars, elevated fasting triglycerides, and low levels of HDL cholesterol. Having 3 or more of these symptoms increases your risk of developing diabetes and cardiovascular diseases. And look at those. You have those 5 grams of noodle preservative is lethal. And it's found in most of your foods. It's found in biscuits, granola bars, potato crisps, margarines, ice creams, chewing gum, McDonald's, chicken McNuggets, and many more. And by the way, too, this one I actually put this up there too before. Preservative, your TBHQ levels. Did you know? There's a report now that they have actually, women who paint their fingernails have had their urine tested, and you come back 7 hours later and they have found in incredible amounts of lacquer in their system. I was stunned when I found that out. I couldn't believe it. Just for having your fingernail polish. It shows up in your urine. And I'll look for that study. I can't remember where it is, but I've looked for it at home. Okay, more toxic in liquid form, so we can remember that. I think I've talked to you about that one before. And it's got no nutrient. What nutrient content is there in 2-minute noodles? But we have to really return to whole living foods for optimal health, okay? And what basically you have to plan plan your meals ahead of time. You've got to be thinking ahead of time. But I wanted to share with you, before I finish, there's a few more things that I wanted to share with you which stunned me when I found out. Cenomix is a company founded in 1999, and it's a high-tech research and development company that is dedicated to finding new flavors to reduce sugars and reduce salt. They developed a substance, 951, a potentiator that used to amplify the sweetness of sugar in food products, thereby allowing the manufacturer to reduce the amount of sugar used. Now, Cenomix is developed patently, is a flavor enhancer by using proprietary taste receptor base assay system. These receptors identify flavors. Now, these receptors have been previously expressed in HEK293 cells, which HEK stands for human embryonic kidney cells. These cells originally came from healthy, electively aborted human fetuses in the early 1970s. Using information derived from the human genome sequence, Cenomix has identified hundreds of taste receptors and currently owns 113 patents on their discoveries. And this is what they are putting in foods now. These new chemicals are added to foods, and they are new additives that are unique because they are not flavors at all. They are chemicals that contain no flavor of their own. Rather, they activate or block taste receptors in your mouth. These chemicals can mimic or enhance the taste of sugar, salt, and MSG, for example. And they are called chemical flavorings. So they're not natural flavorings. Remember, excitotoxins were natural flavorings. These are different. Now, Cenomix Laboratories collaborates with 7 of the world's largest food companies to further their research and to fund development of their technology. Ajinomoto, Kraft Foods, Pepsi, Nestle, and Campbell's all collaborate with Cenomix but do not specify where its additives may be found in their products. And so here are some of the products. Campbell's soups, PepsiCo juice drinks, coffee, food, chips, Cadbury's, Kraft Foods, your gum, your lozenges and Cadbury chocolates, your Nestle, your candies, your drinks, your infant food, you go through them all. Cereals, even in water. Some of the water. Vitamins, your Vice creams, your pet foods, your sports nutrition, in Jenny Craig. So you've got all these hidden things and you have no idea where they're coming from. Now, I'll just touch on a few more, which some of you saw a few meetings ago when I talked about transglutaminase. That's a powdered enzyme that they're gluing the meat together. And they get this transglutaminase from the cultivation of bacteria or from pig's blood and cow's blood that they are using to mixture of, you're getting mixture, you're getting bits of meat that they're stirring together and they're making it into a block of meat. So it becomes a prime cut. Okay, then there's another one. This is what it's used for. But there's now they're also rebranding aspartame and they're calling it amino sweet. The aspartame producer, Ajinomoto, is rebranding their sweetener as amino sweet. You see, some of these things are getting a bad name. People are avoiding, I don't want anything with aspartame in it. But they're buying something with different names. So please be careful of what you're eating. Now, this is one that I just thought that I'd share with you, which just blew me away. L-cysteine, which is a dough conditioner, is found in a lot of bakery products. but it's an industrial created by hydrolysis of human hair and poultry feathers. And this excitotoxin is important for artificial flavour creation. I can still remember once years ago, there's a woman came to my class and she said to me, she said, you know what they're putting in bread mixes now? They're putting in feathers. And I sort of thought, this is a bit ridiculous. I didn't say too much to her. I thought, feathers? And I just let it go. And then all of a sudden, when I did this research on me, I understood where she's getting it from. But it's not just feathers, it's also human hair. And it reacts with sugars, resulting in a meaty and a savoury flavour. And most of the hair used to make L-cysteine comes from China, where it's gathered from barber shops and hair salons. It just blew me away when I thought of this. I thought, how can... Propylene glycol is a common synthetic food additive that belongs to the same chemical group as alcohol. And you find this in anti-caking agents, antioxidants, carriers, dough strengtheners, and emulsifiers. So you also find this propylene glycol that's added to so much of your food. A lot of your bakery products have these in it because it says it makes the starches and gluten more stable. Emulsify prevents ingredients from separating. So it's ideal for bakery products. Who's going to go and buy any more bakery products? It's a moisture preserver, it's processing aid, it's stabiliser and a thickener, a texturiser plus used in. So it's used often in bakery products. Now there's another one too that's often used, and that's cellulose. Where do they get cellulose from? Well, that is actually made from wood pulp, sawdust and cotton seeds. Cellulose gum is a thickening agent used in all kinds of food to make foods thick and creamy without the fat. And many diet and low-fat products will use food additives like cellulose gum to give the food a thickener and a creamier consistency, making that much more appealing to consumers. It improves texture, stabilises foam, keeps sugars from crystallising, binds waters and more. And for these reasons, cellulose gum is used frequently in all kinds of food. So what hope have we got? Then we've got food colourings, artificial food dyes. And you know what? It's in a lot of the stuff. It's in a lot of the roll-ups, the fruit roll-ups. It's in the ice blocks. And be careful with what you put in your mouth. And we really have to go back to basics, really basics, to whole food, plant-based diet. Now, is there any questions? That was something else, wasn't it? Yes? Yeah, antifreeze, yeah. Yeah, propylene glycol is an antifreeze. Is in toothpastes too, yes. Yes, just hold on, we'll get the microphone so they can pick it up on the tape.
I was wondering, the little...
That's on, yes.
The small sachets of to keep your food dry, do they have any...
As far as I know, they're
anything?
fine. Okay, but you're not putting them and you're not eating them. You don't need to eat them. They are just moisture absorbers, yes.
I make my own stocks and all of that and all my broths and that. But when I do my soup, I sometimes put in... I've never had those noodle things because I've never liked them.
Yep.
But I use like rice noodles.
Yep.
Are they okay?
Yeah. Look, I think there are certain things that,
Because it just says like 100% rice and that's it.
Yeah. I think they're fine. Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah. I'm glad that you think. I want you to think of making your own stocks up. It is important. What I've done is I make up my own stock and I make up a double batch, and then I actually have dehydrated it and made it into a powder. Now, you don't have to do that. I keep it, and it keeps for ages in the fridge, but I actually freeze it because I've made up so much that I just keep it in a, and it doesn't freeze. It stays liquid even in the freezer. So I can just go and get a spoon of it and put it in my, into my broth or whatever, or my soup.
If you keep going past that stage and you put it in a dehydrator and dry it out on those flat trays,
Yes.
and I stir it till it gets a powder, until it's completely dry, then I put it in the Vitamizer and
Yes.
up, and then you've got a lovely vegetable salt,
Yes.
or a stock salt,
Yes.
without the
It's
all
without all
other
the additives
to
in it.
Yeah.
And let's face it, look, we all know there are times when we've got a little bit more time to prepare a meal. But there's so often you think, oh, what am I going to have for lunch today? You need to have something that you can do in a hurry. There's always something that you want to have and do in a hurry. So this is ideal. And if I know for me, and I don't always put that stock in it. Sometimes I don't. I just, whatever I'm cooking, it depends what recipe I'm going for. But I do have that stock in my freezer. Yes?
I recently bought and I'm not making a ad for it, a Thermomix.
Yes?
And I found it's been really great. And one of the first things I did was the stock, making my own vegetable stock. And it made 2 small bottles about that size on the recipe. And it said put them in your fridge in clean bottles.
Yes.
And you could use it for 6 months.
Yeah, the Thermomix
really
recipe
good.
is an excellent recipe because that's the one I've used too. But I actually dehydrate it too, which I don't always do, but I have dehydrated it, and becomes powder, and it's a little bit more, I like to experiment to see if this works, things work, and it did work. So it was very effective. And then you could just have a little bit, but you've got to know how much to put in, because you need to, I put in that, and I put in maybe a tablespoon of that broth, that my own mixture, and I tell you what, it's made it so salty because it's very high. It's got a lot of salt in it.
I've actually, when I got my Thermomix probably 8 years ago, I said that's a hell of a, because I think it's like 150 grams of salt.
Yes.
So I've reduced it down to 50.
Yep. I did too.
In winter, in summer I put it to 75.
Yep.
And it's still, well, I use it a lot. I probably making it every 2 months.
Yep.
So, but I reckon if you haven't got a Thermomix, I don't sell them, but it's the best thing you can buy to start helping you make, your all your pastes and everything, all your spreads, your milk. If you want to make almond milk or coconut milk or anything.
Although your blender will
scratch.
do it too.
Pardon?
Your blender will do that too.
Oh yeah, but like even the cooking the stock.
Yeah.
The stock paste.
Yeah. True. Any more questions? We need to, I believe, for me personally, I know how important this has been. I have been like on a little mini crusade in my own life and with my family, and I avoid them. I mean, I avoid these excitotoxins everywhere I go. Peter knows how fussy I am. I'm reading labels and I'm going places. Obviously, if I go to somebody's place and they've made a recipe, I don't go saying, oh, has that got excitotoxins in them? I don't do that, okay? I believe your body is designed to handle a little bit, and so you can handle a small amount, but mine is the exception more so than the rule. But you need to realise that just a little bit all the time, a little bit and a little bit, just having a slice of bit of Vegemite on a piece of toast is enough to keep those excitotoxins up. And who would have told you that that's what's causing your metabolic problems?
Instead of Vegemite, I've talked to you, I've said that before last time, I think it was, in the health shops, It's called Every Mite, and it's done with black sesame seeds. No nasties in it whatsoever, and it's beautiful.
Okay, so there's you can get. Okay, you can get different spreads. Yes. And I know it's important, you see, when you're doing and when you're getting rid of your all your spreads, when you're getting rid of your margarine, which we don't have margarine in our house, you get rid of your butter, you need something to put on bread. And so this is ideal, you know. You just need to know and have different recipes so you can just make up something just simple and that actually your family like, and which I made up a pot. Yeah, how often I make up a big pot, and I have a lot of people around for my place for lunch. People just come there. Everybody comes and has a lunch there, and I'll make a big pot of hummus, and all of a sudden the whole pot is gone by the end of the meal. And I think because they're taking big spoonfuls of them, you know, like a dessert spoonful each. Yeah, but so be it. It's healthy. It's good for you.
I've got a question. What about miso paste?
Miso's fine. Miso's a different thing. It's a cultured paste. Yeah. Miso is one of the few that you could use. Yeah. Yes, as a spread.
Yeah.
And I like miso as a spread. Yes.
I use at home. I don't use soy sauce, and I don't use tamari. I use coconut.
Aminos.
Yes,
Yeah,
so
coconut.
That's fine.
Yes, I think, but I also know that is it's got some excitotoxins in because of the process. It's like that Bragg's liquid aminos. People, years ago, we were told, oh, get off soy sauce, go to Bragg's liquid aminos. Well, Bragg's liquid aminos are just as bad as soy sauce. And nobody is telling people that. And people are substituting, think, oh, this is nice and healthy. But they don't realise that the Bragg's liquid aminos are the same because it's bringing out the liquid. Remember, they're bringing out that taste. It's just that salty taste. Yeah. So I'm even aware of coconut. I'm aware that you can get coconut aminos, and I haven't done a heap of research into it. But I tell you what, they just seems to be that everywhere you go, all of these food manufacturers, they all want you to buy their product, and they're all on the same path, and I don't think they're all as good as we should be. It's probably better off, you're wiser making your own. Okay, I think, is that all? Yes?
With any dried fruits, do you buy them all organically, or do you dry your own for the sulfites?
I do both. But most of my dry fruit now is what I've got, that I've dried myself. We actually found in the last summer, we found an apple tree that was out in the middle of pristine environment, and like it was huge, this huge apple tree, but you couldn't get there. You had to get there with a ladder because the deer were getting in there. It was in a forest, and the deer were getting there. They were eating all the bottom apples off, so there was none. And you couldn't even reach high enough. Even when I'd stretch, you couldn't reach. So our son-in-law got his ladder, and he got a long extension pole, and they went back, and Peter and he and we all went down there, and we got bucket loads full of these apples. And I brought them home, and I dried them. And what I did is I just peeled them and I cored them, and I dipped them in a salt and water solution. I tell you what, they are delicious. Even now, we want to have some snack, I would just get out my apples, dried apples. They are just so nice. And they have just stayed the same colour. They haven't changed because you know how you use the sulfates to stop them discolouring, but they have just been excellent. So I do the same thing. Nearly all of it, I don't worry about the colour. But yeah. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. But yet I do have some dry fruit that I buy because not everything. I can't keep it up. Yeah, hard work, yes. Yes. But it's rewarding, isn't it? Yeah. Or your dried tomatoes too, another one too, which we do. Yeah. Any other questions? Otherwise we will finish off. Well, thank you for coming. Remember next Sunday, like a month from today, is going to be on electrosmog, how we need to be careful of that. And the one on the week before that is on the gut-brain connection. Okay, thank you for that.